right, and then just for those of you watching on Zoom, thanks for participating and for being here. This is the City of Escondido Independent Redistricting Commission. My name is Zach Beck, City Clerk, joined here by the other members of the Independent Redistricting Commission. We're just going to get this meeting started. And as that begins, first things first is we obviously have roll call. Right now, all of our members are present with the exception of two of our commissioners, Marielle Saldana and Amy Dowen, who will both be potentially joining us via Zoom in a little bit, but the rest of the commissioners are present, so we have a quorum. First order of business, though, would be oral communication, and we have no one in the chambers who submitted a form, but I just want to ask anyone joining via Zoom, would any of you like to make any comments? Do you have up to 3 minutes to have any public comments? If you would like, you're able to do so at this time. I am seeing none at this time, and if that changes, we have another opportunity at the end of the meeting, so not a problem at all. With that being said, it'd be item number 3, so Chair Case, if you want to take that away, it's just the approval of the minutes from last meeting.
I'd like to make a motion to approve last month's minutes.
I'll second.
Great, so we have a motion from Chair Case, a second from Commissioner Clemens. So we aren't using the voting system, just so you guys know, because we're socially distanced, so the way it's structured, so it'll just be a hand vote. So all in favor? All right, and then no one to oppose that, so motion approved 5-0. And now moving on to item number 4, which is the community outreach consultant selection. So first, some background and context. As you remember during our last meeting, we discussed about the possibility of obtaining services from a consultant who does community outreach to basically engage the community in our process of conducting public hearings that's going to take place primarily in January and February of 2022. So we put together an RFP, sent that out, and it was for about $20,000, and asking someone to come up with the game plan for us to be able to do that. And I would say Commissioner Clemens and Commissioner Reynoso, you guys were spot on. We sent it out for $20,000, but received no bids back. As a result of that, we scaled back the request for what we were asking for, and still received no bids back. I sent an email to you guys just before the meeting because I just got this proposal. As a result of that and the timeline that we're looking at, our communications department has said that they're able to do the work for us, but they came up with a draft plan that would kind of cover in that same budget, about $15,000 to $20,000. So I sent it to you, but for the purposes of the members of the public who are attending and watching, I can read over that proposal for everyone, just edification, and that way we're all kind of on the same page, and I'd love to get your direction as to how we want to proceed accordingly. So here's the outreach plan, and this is from Teresa Collins, who's the Deputy Director of Communications for the City of Escondido, so it'd be done internally. So basically all of the outreach materials we created in English and Spanish. Something to be aware of is that we are legally required by the consent decree to produce our public notices and offer in-person translation at all of the required public hearings in 5 languages. For our outreach materials, we can decide if we want to expand to those 5, but for the purpose of this plan, because keeping the costs at around $20,000, English and Spanish is what is being proposed. That can change. The outreach would consist of starting with a postcard mailing. This is where we basically have our water bill that is sent out to citizens of Escondido. They'd be able to receive it. It'd be a water quality mailing that goes out to about 63,000 businesses and residents, and it would cost approximately $15,000. They could design this in-house, so it'd be designed by the city staff. They would do call for quotes for printing and mail house and mailing options. This postcard would basically serve as the official notice for the redistricting timeline, the opportunities to engage, and there would be a URL and a QR code on it as well. So the actual material itself would basically be all-encompassing. On top of that, we will already be doing all of our public noticing that are legally required. So this is more just the marketing of what's happening. So this mailing would basically tell everyone, hey, during the month of January and February, we're doing all of our big public outreach, so public hearings. So what they also include in this is social media posts, create a scheduled series of posts geared towards residents. Post examples would be Escondido residents, we need your voice. Attention Escondido residents, the City of Escondido wants to hear from you. Next one would be, do you know who represents your city council district? Find out here. Posts would be shared on Instagram, Nextdoor, Facebook, and Twitter. And then they would also utilize the city newsletters and the weekly activity report. They would feature content with graphics that direct back to that same URL. This would also go out to the economic development newsletter, the neighborhood services newsletter, the library newsletter, the Park Avenue Community Center post, also part of their weekly activity report. They would do slides on Channel 19, a mix of graphics and text. There'd be a website banner on the city's website with a tagline with a link back to the URL. we'd have a slide before council meetings as well as before commission meetings with the video message prior to the meeting to basically encourage people to participate, sharing the key dates and the timelines for the overall commission redistricting process, physical posters in city facilities with QR codes linking back to the URL, noticing through community partners like the Chamber of Commerce, the DBA, Cafe, and then school districts like Peach Jar. So, make sure we're kind of reaching out to the schools. Mailing, like we said, about $15,000. Sponsored posts would be about $1,000, and printing roughly $500. So that's kind of their tentative approach that they're looking at. A few things that doesn't include that we had originally put out in the RFP was like maybe a text message campaign, maybe door knocking, some of the more robust outreach that we can still consider. But basically, that's kind of where things stand. So for our purposes, I think it'd be helpful, and obviously we'll have a chance for the public to get their input on this as well. But if you think through any reasons why we should try to put out another RFP and try and get a consultant, or should we just focus in on the in-house materials and go from there? Yeah.
Well, so I have some thoughts here. So this proposal's really interesting and very convenient, but the thing that jumps out at me is it looks like a really big conflict of interest. This is an independent redistricting commission, and basically we'd be using state, i.e. the city's funds and resources to fund the outreach. And I think that if anything, that sets the wrong message. With that being said, after looking at the RFP document that you sent out, I'm not surprised we didn't get any feedback or any hits on that. So this is what I was thinking, and this is one of my questions. We know that the translation service that we're gonna have to pay down the line, because we don't have a translator contract yet, right?
We do not have one formalized yet.
Okay, so if we could somehow find because in the RFP, there was a lot of translation stuff going on, and to include the materials like the brochures and stuff, right? So if we could find a hybrid outreach firm that would, we could throw in translation services in the RFP, I feel like we could really get that, just unequivocal outreach and representation, right? Rather than, the conflict of interest with the city handling this, and then just thinking about what not a drain, but the city, chambers, the city of Escondido should be spending their money on other things, There's a budget for this, even though no one's getting paid, there's that human capital. Mm-hmm. Right? So those are just my thoughts.
So I don't know if it's truly a conflict of interest just because the city staff is an unbiased entity. So just as the city council depends on them to give them an unbiased presentation of, what their options are, I think it would actually maybe be a disservice to us to not go with the city, specifically because they do have such a vast network within the city itself. Like what Zach mentioned, reaching out through Peach Jar, which is a huge distribution way to distribute to communities across the city. So I don't think personally that it's a conflict of interest. I do have a concern with just doing, just one mailer and maybe, the viability of the cost that they've proposed. I think that we're going to go above that regardless. And then too, I think one of the things we do want to consider is, what the requirements are for language and translation services. So if we only go with Spanish and English, what does the cost above that look like? So I think, in working my prior experience with the city itself, they've had resources that I didn't even know existed, and I don't think that relying on them to market this, I don't think that they have any interest one way or another as to, like the city staff specifically, as to, what our districts end up looking like. I think if anything, they would support us, just like Zach supports us and he's part of the city.
Yeah. Well, I think anytime that the government gives a body of private citizens money to provide a product, and that body of private citizens goes back and pays the government for its services, in my mind, that's kind of like a presumptive conflict in a sense. And I'm not saying that we'll necessarily have a legal issue. What I'm saying is just the perception that there's, right? Like, why go? So my second question was, what is our timeline?
Yeah. Because
why not, if there's options for us to explore from, the outside community and,
Yeah, totally. And both Chair Case, Commissioner Clemens, you guys both make great points. I think I might have described it incorrectly when I said the city is doing it in-house from the standpoint of we wouldn't be paying the city to do it. So the commission, you've already established a budget, it's $200,000. We kind of section off about $20,000 roughly for marketing, and that's what's building out this plan. The money that would be spent towards the city would basically just be 100% used to do the marketing, because the city staff that is actually doing this, they're all salaried, they're already paid for, they have their jobs, so they wouldn't be taking on this contract as a means to augment any of their own income. It would simply just be to facilitate the actual marketing of the commission's preference. So just that would be like number one. Number two, as far as timeline is concerned, we had put a goal that we wanted to start at least having the marketing plan ready to basically launch sometime either in late fall, early winter, because the meetings start early January. Our first public hearing is January 5th, and we're trying to find appropriate way to do so where it doesn't get lost in the holiday mix, and that's kind of the challenge. So I think we'd originally discussed sometime in that November timeframe. So conceivably, we could go forward with another RFP. We could try and do something. The benefits of utilizing in-house, just from what we've experienced so far, is that the response so far was none, that no one wanted to take on the contract. So I don't know how much further we need to up the budget to do that. And at $200,000 for the commission's total budget and $20,000 allocated this way, we would have to go back to the council to request a budget adjustment and we would get those resources, but it would just be another step we would have to take, and that might delay that, because we have to go to the council again and get that agendized. But it's something we can do. You guys have complete discretion over how we allocate these resources. The reason the city's basically just stepping in because there's no other alternative at this present moment. So that's the thought.
So my third question and thing that I wanted to bring up to the council, and I apologize for my snarkiness.
Well, I'm so used to that in my day job.
I know.
No, I just, just the perception that there's something not above board. We want to be, the Marines say, above reproach, unquestionable, right? So, okay, so my third question was, now that you told us the timeline and that there's some time, legally, are we allowed to research and solicit potential firms that could provide these services? Or does it have to go through the official RFP process?
I would be, and I apologize, I'm not a lawyer, so I can't speak completely to the legality of it, but I think the appropriate way to do would be to go through the channel that we have, the organized channel of setting out an RFP, and then people can bid on it, and then tonight the objective was to be able to show you the proposals for you to begin to digest and then make a selection at next meeting. So basically we could do that again, and then maybe write a different RFP, consider upping the overall dollar amount. But what Teresa was telling me is that, and I apologize because I'm not an expert in the communications field, but there are a number of other cities and municipalities who are going through a similar process as us, and there's a limited pool of these types of firms that exist out there. So they're probably going to be most incentivized to go to the larger contracts. And as a result of that, it just depends upon how much money we really want to allocate in that direction. That's just kind of what it comes down to. So if we want to double it and go to 40,000, maybe we would get a hit or two on that. I don't know, but so far, just nothing has happened in that regard. So I think we have the option of we're not forced to make a decision tonight or even the next meeting in September. We could try again, and then this just kind of stays as a fallback if we strike out again. So there's options that exist. Yeah.
Can I propose something and then just put something out there and see how you guys feel? The next meeting or beforehand, do you think you could send us a breakdown of our current budget?
Yeah.
Like projected and everything, and like preferably a pie chart, you know, super easy to digest.
Sure.
The second thing is, I think that we should really try to tap into the community, you know, as a council, when it comes to this outreach. And what I submit to you is, you know, I think that we should double the budget and just really try to, like, not be cheap on this process that happens every 10 years. So I'm going to shut my trap and see what you guys think about that.
Okay, great. I actually really appreciate that last comment, Commissioner Case, because so I come from the private sector. I'm a consultant. I can totally understand why we haven't received many proposals so far from firms. But I really do like the proposal that city staff have put together. I think it's a good foundation for us to build off of as we move forward with our outreach process. And maybe a compromise we can have here between the city staff proposal and additional robust outreach is creating some sort of mini grant program. Maybe it could be $2,500 grants, $5,000 grants that community-based organizations within Escondido, faith-based organizations, nonprofits, et cetera, can apply to, and can do some of that door-to-door knocking or the text messaging or other strategies that they already do in their general work plan, scope of works, and we're just building off of what they already do. So that would be my first suggestion. Then my second suggestion is for us to, so I think those listed social media platforms are great. I think we can, if we want to outreach to non-English speaking communities, we should probably add WhatsApp and WeChat to those lists, and maybe think of posts that are geared towards that, or again, work with community-based organizations, faith-based organizations that send messages out on those platforms.
Yeah, that sounds great. Thank you. Any thoughts, Commissioner Wilkinson or Commissioner Reyes? Any input or insight?
Yeah, a couple of things is I do like what the city has put forth. The one concern I had was the mailers of how do they choose those businesses?
Yeah, so I don't know 100%, but I believe this is the overall distribution list for the water bill, and I believe it would just be the same list that they're utilizing for the water bill.
So then anyone that has a water bill through Escondido would get one of those mailers. Okay.
That's my understanding.
Okay. I was just for the idea of saying, all right, let's make sure that it's separate, is that they're not picking and choosing who those mailers go to.
No.
Okay.
Yeah, they would just, it would be a blanket. As I understand it would either be an insert into the water bill or it would be a part of it. I apologize because I don't know their process 100% on that, but that's my understanding.
Okay. And then my other thing is that I'm not sure making the budget higher is going to double or get more people here at these meetings and at these commissions. And just because we are a smaller city, that I think that this would be sufficient enough to get the outreach out there. But I don't agree with doubling the money at this point, just because we have to get going. We are at the timeline, having that outreach, getting that outreach done now than later, I think is really important.
I also really, sorry, I don't know if I sound super loud. I also really like the way that this is broken down because I think it hits a lot of really good areas and where the research can be done by the city. Are we going to have, like, during those outreach meetings where we're meeting with the community, because my thing, I'm kind of looking at the QR codes. I don't know about y'all, but when you go get tested, like, QR codes are a really big thing. And I always see people have trouble with these QR codes, so I don't know if that's going to be somehow explained to people, is what I'm kind of thinking. So how accessible that could be. But I mean, we could always talk to, when this is getting done, like, how accessible that could be in terms of, like, accessing that information and stuff. Yeah, I mean, that's all I have to add. But I do really like and appreciate the way that this is broken down. I also don't really agree about the whole maybe expanding the budget, because again, I do agree that we do have to get started, but I do really like your idea, Juan, about maybe getting the community involved and seeing how they could participate in our outreach and stuff, maybe if it's grants, figuring out a way in which we can incorporate faith-based, the faith-based community and just other organizations, nonprofits, or people who are putting the groundwork with the community. So yeah, that's all I have to add.
Thanks, Commissioner Reyes. Commissioner Clemens, Chair Case, any other thoughts on this?
I do have one,
yes.
a couple other thoughts. I mean, just doing some quick math, we do have a little bit left over from the proposed budget from the city. There's a little bit left over from that 20,000 that we could use for that type of mini grant to 1 or 2 or 3 different organizations or faith-based groups. Commissioner Jorgensen, your comment did strike a question for me: is when do these water quality bill or mailers go out? Would that be in December? I don't remember exactly.
Yeah, I don't know the exact date. I know on a monthly basis, but I'm not entirely certain when the exact date is that it goes out. And if you want, I can obtain information from Teresa. It wasn't outlined in her proposal, but that would be important information to know.
Could she come to the next meeting?
Definitely.
That would be great.
So we could ask her some questions and just get a feeling for what her processes are? Okay.
Ladies first.
Yeah, great. So I think we're I think we're all headed kind of in the same direction. Maybe maybe I don't want to speak for you, Chair Case, but I think Juan's idea of the grants is tremendous. I think even if we can get some students involved, that would be awesome as well. So maybe that's something that we can ask Teresa when she's here, is like how she would go about that, or if that's a RFP in and of itself. I'm not sure how grants really work. And then as far as the city's proposal, I think I've said my piece on that, and I wouldn't be opposed to increasing the budget later on down the road if we anticipate more outreach is needed.
Yeah, so I think to extend the chair member's point about the mailers, one thing that I think we should recognize is that, you know, that's going to go out to, I think it was 136,000.
I think it's at 63,000 if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
Yeah,
Six-
businesses and households. Yeah.
163,000 households.
63.
63,000 households, right? That's
Households
not
and businesses, yeah.
households and businesses. That's not a reflection of the electorate, right? Like in Escondido, in your average 2-bedroom apartment, at least in my district, there's more than 2 voting age adults living there, right? So, you know, that's just something that I think of when it comes to the getting the city involved. And I think your idea of the mini grant, though, was crucial. But I think it's a conflict of interest a little bit. But with that being said, we all obviously agree, for the most part, that is our best option. Would you guys say so?
I wonder if we can like help, you know, define the contract in a way that allows us to demonstrate that it's not a conflict of interest. So if we can define the terms for the city, like you will do this by this date, or, you know, have parameters so that it seems less biased or
Zach, maybe
conflict.
get like a legal opinion letter
Yeah, I could work with the city attorney's office and have something drafted. They could review whatever relevant code is in the California,
Right.
just basically to make sure that there is no conflict of interest. What I think might be helpful would be to have that letter produced before our next meeting and then having Teresa here to really go into detail. And I apologize, I don't have as much depth on this because it just came in this afternoon, but she could go over that in detail and then we could really have a clear direction, and by next meeting we could understand what the grant process looks like. Great idea. And that kind of keeps us within that $20,000 framework. We're able to proceed based off of that. We could start getting the outreach going, and then at a later time, if we want to augment that, we could consider doing so, but at least we wouldn't have to be holding back the initial outreach done at the outset.
That was a great idea. Still don't like the idea in general,
Yeah.
but I'm not worried about conflicts of interest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So do we need to make a motion about how all that went, or?
I think this is more just kind of direction given, because it's, and let me just restate it so I kind of understand, and we could take a vote if you would like, but I think since it's a little bit more broad, I don't know if it's necessary. So basically I'll have Teresa come back the next meeting. In between this meeting and the next meeting, I'll send you the budget breakdown just so we have that as an awareness of where things stand and how this $20,000 fits into the total $200,000 budget. We're going to explore a mini grant option, and as of right now, the direction is to have Teresa proceed in the direction of moving forward with her plan that she put forward, but not execute on that until she's had the chance to speak with you directly during our next meeting, which I believe is scheduled for, I want to say September 27th, if I'm not mistaken. So that's kind of my marching orders. Am I missing anything from that?
Oh, sorry.
The legal.
Yeah.
The legal opinion, yeah, the city attorney's opinion. So yeah, that to me sounds good. And then we'll think through like QR codes, making sure that everything's accessible. So that's dialogue I can talk to Teresa about in advance of our next meeting, so that she has some context going into her discussion with you. Yeah. Yes.
I have two more comments. This may be getting ahead of ourselves because it is more in January and February, and this might not be in the scope of this communications proposal from the city staff, but to what extent can we consider at the workshops providing childcare or some light snacks or beverages or things like that to entice people to come, so that we can ensure that more
More of the electorate.
electorate shows up or is enticed to show up, because many of these will be happening in the evenings and people are scheduling around dinner. If we can at least help them transition to that, and childcare and food costs money, and so ensuring that we can provide some space in the budget for that, maybe that's the piece that goes over the 20K. I don't know, just throwing out an idea.
Great idea. So I'd already been planning on having some sort of food at these different meetings, light refreshments or anything to that extent we could go. It could be a little more substantial, but childcare, that's a great point. I'd have to talk with our legal team. I don't know if there's any like insurance elements associated with that, and at the different locations we're going to be situated at, I'd have to see if that would necessitate reserving an additional room and all of that, but I'm sure it's very feasible. I'll just have to explore what the legality is, but it's a great idea.
Yeah, it's just that families have very different needs than just other types of households. So ensuring that they can feel welcomed at these type of events would be great. The other comment I had is I just wanted to check in if the other commissioners on Zoom had any comments. I don't see it on my.
I haven't seen Amy
Okay.
or Mariella join. So far we have six.
Just wanted to double check.
Good catch. Great. So that's perfect. I'll proceed accordingly, and then we'll basically plan for our next meeting to execute on these different items. Let me just look here. So the next item is, and before we proceed, do any members of the public have any comments on the communications, the community outreach consultant, the discussion that just happened? If anyone does, you can just raise your hand or... Yeah, I'm seeing none, so thank you very much for participating. Next item is item number 5, which is Commissioner Communication Policy. This came up during our last meeting, and it was discussed a little bit at length. I just for some context, I'll tell you what they do with the County Redistricting Commission. They have in their bylaws a specific guideline as it relates to commissioner communication, and I'll just read it for you. So it says, pursuant to the Article 2 of the bylaws and operating procedures of the County of San Diego, independent Independent Redistricting Commission, commissioners must disclose all substantive, written, and oral communications outside of public meetings with any member of the public, organizations, or interest groups regarding redistricting and forward such communications to the staff for posting on the IRC website. The document linked below logs all the communications by staff. So what Chair Case had brought forward was maybe if we could adopt a similar policy here, whereby, at last time I believe Commissioner Dowan had had some dialogue with a group outside of this, and in that instance, how this would actually work is she or he, one of you would email myself that dialogue, and I would just categorize it and keep it on the city's website. So it's just a matter of if you guys want to do something like that, we definitely can. But Chair Case is your item, so if you have anything else you want to add.
Sure, yeah, thank you. And so I don't think we need anything close to what the county has. I don't even really know if we need a log. Maybe you guys feel that way, maybe you feel differently. But at least being aware of it, like, hey, if, go ahead.
Yeah, so like if, one of us were to bring up, I spoke with I spoke to a group and they really want this, being a little more transparent, right? And like who that group was, where did you talk to them, just like, is that what you're thinking?
Correct.
Okay. I think that's a great idea. I think the more transparency we have, the better.
So should we just maybe put it in the minutes?
Yeah.
Just something as simple as that, and this is recorded, right? So
Yeah, I think what we could do, so like at council meetings and at certain commission meetings like Library Board of Trustees, we'll have at the end of the meeting where basically commissioners do a report out or the councilors report out, and we could just build this into the end of I'll just have an agenda item where you report out any communications and anything else that you want to talk about that's relevant to the commission, and I would just log it in the minutes, and that's kind of the public record, and that's posted on the website. So it'd kind of fill the same purpose, but it'd be a little more efficient that way. We could totally do that.
sounds great.
Cool. On that one, since that one is a little more formal direction policy, probably worth taking an official vote on. So I don't know if someone wants to make the official motion based off of that.
I motion to add a section at the end of every meeting whereby the commissioners discuss who they've spoken to in the community about redistricting.
I second.
Great, perfect. So all in favor, should raise your hand. All right, and then Commissioner Saldana and Dowan are not here, so motion approved 5-0. So that concludes that item. Now we have a future agenda. Anything else you'd like placed on the next agenda for a future meeting? Anything else that you guys can think of you want discussed? Right now it's going to be basically formalizing our discussion with Teresa and having the city attorney letter. But outside of that, I think at that time I will have Jane or Karen here, depending upon their schedule, to go over the data that's officially been released, because that's going to be released on September 20th. So at least we can kind of begin to digest that and understand what that's going to look like. And just for your awareness, we're already building up on the city's website. I just got during this meeting an email from Jane with some of the materials that are going to go online for people to be able to submit their communities of interest on the city's website. So maybe going over a little more in depth on that, and so the public can begin to understand how they can start drawing their own lines and producing maps and all of that stuff. So I don't know if there's anything else you want added to the next agenda.
So, Zach, I know, we've been kind of sparse, and it's understandable. Would we be able to, attend like city events and have a booth or something whereby we can like do the outreach that we're talking about, like ourselves? I mean, obviously we'd have to be careful in discussing things if there's more than 4 of us present, but is that an option for us?
100% option. So we can augment what we were talking about previously with like the normal community outreach that Teresa was referring to. That's kind of just like the formal element, but more informal, attending Cruising Grand or attending a farmer's market or, setting up a booth. We can help facilitate. I can get you, reserve a spot, and then, we can rotate commissioners. But that is definitely something that we can organize. I think that would be helpful because that's more of the boots on the ground, talking face to face to someone to really encourage them to get involved. So we can definitely do that. And if you want, at the next meeting, I can just put that on the agenda as an item, and maybe I can put together kind of a few options of different events that are going to happen between now and then we can maybe schedule a time for whoever has the time and ability to attend those types of events, if that would be helpful. Okay, cool, I can do that. Anything else? Yeah.
A couple of us before the meeting started had a brief conversation about this, but it would be great if we can start maybe reviewing the websites or meetings of other independent redistricting commissions and just sharing our findings and what we've learned from going to the county's independent redistricting commission meeting, or from seeing some website and just pieces that we thought were really good, that we can apply and to our own website or to our own outreach process. So maybe just doesn't necessarily have to be a standing part of our agenda, but ensuring that we share findings from other places.
Would you like me to, on that note, for the next meeting, basically put together a proposal where I can at least bring all the different websites for like the state board, the county, and then we could just kind of walk through them in time? Would that be helpful? Okay, yeah.
I'm a visual learner. I love that approach. So yes.
All right, perfect. All right, I'll put that on the agenda then too, so that way we can at least kind of get to visualize how they're doing it and what their interface looks like. Perfect. Great. Any other future agenda items or anything else?
Yeah, not so much something formally, but just something that, keep in the back of your mind. So the last 2 years in this country and state has been pretty unstable and unpredictable, right? We're coming out of the back end of a pandemic. I just want everyone to think about what would this process look like if something were to happen, right? Like, for whatever reason, we're on another state mask lockdown, right? Do we sort of have something in mind, not a formal contingency plan, but to deal with that, right? Because it's going to be messy for everybody, but, if we can just have a plan B.
Yeah, that's a great point. So on that note, one of the things that we adopted as a commission adopted at the very beginning was having the hybrid model. So like what we're currently having, where we have Zoom and in person. So I would foresee it having to migrate more to a remote dynamic, but we could create a scenario at these different physical locations where people could still provide public testimony, because what we don't want to do is prevent people who don't have access to the internet or access to a computer from being able to give their input on what communities of interest could look like. So I would basically see us maintaining some form of a hybrid model, but where the attendance at that meeting would be very
Like a live feed from that area.
yeah, we'd have to have very limited socially distance, maybe only allowing one person at a time to do it. We could be creative. We kind of did similar things to an extent in the council, but I think something more robust. So yeah, having that thought process in our minds now is actually really helpful. So I appreciate you bringing that up. And I can maybe put that together as like a, somewhat of a report if you want next.
Just putting it on the radar,
Okay, all right, perfect. Great. Any other thoughts? All right, we'll check with the public. Any members attending the meeting, those on Zoom, thanks again for being here. It's the last chance for oral communications. I do see Mary's hand up, so let me just get Mary, and let me get my timer going. Sorry, Mary, you can unmute, and let me just get the timer, and you have 3 minutes starting now.
Thank you, and thank you for taking my question. My question relates to the new communication plan that the city is, I guess, released this afternoon. And my question is, will that be up and posted on the website prior to the next meeting?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, it will. Thank you so much, Ms. Thompson. That'll be posted, and it'll be included as part of the agenda packet for the next meeting. Great. And I see Linda Wilkinson, and I think Georgine Tomasi, I think I might have seen your hand come up as well. So Linda Wilkinson, feel free to proceed. Oh, sorry, Georgine. Linda, go for it.
I was just wondering, I've been going to the supervisors' IRC meetings, and they seem to have a lot more information about the actual maps, and that they have a map person already on staff that's going to actually make their maps. Does the city have the same thing?
Great question. Thanks for asking. So yes, we do. We retain the services of Dr. Karen McDonald and Q2 Data Research, and they are the group that's actually going to be facilitating the building of the maps. The reason why you're seeing a slightly different approach right now currently with the county in relation to what's happening here is due to the fact that we do not have a primary election in Escondido for the city of Escondido. So our maps aren't due until April 15th, whereas the counties are due on December 15th. And because of that, you're seeing a bit more robust development of the maps happening happening right now, even though the county doesn't have access to the fully released data. They have the legacy data from the census. They'll have more of that information after September 20th. But we will have a robust map drawing process that takes place primarily starting in January. So up until this point, it's been mostly getting the commission familiarized with the process and the public familiarized with that. We did a workshop more heavily involved with what the map drawing process will look like back in July, but we'll continue to do more outreach over the course of the next period of time before January, so that way the public is ready to go. But yes, we do have that level of service for the demographer.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other insight, questions? All right. I see none at this time. So with that being said, Chair Case, you're able to adjourn the meeting if you like.
Meeting adjourned.
Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for attending on Zoom. We appreciate you and hope you guys have a great evening.